Hello, everybody. Welcome to URBONUS podcast. I'm Donatas URBONUS, and I'm joined by Rytis Vyšniauskas. And probably we should introduce ourselves before we're gonna start, right?
I believe so, because probably not so many people know me. Maybe they know you because you already had some podcasts with other colleagues about interesting topics. I really enjoyed the one about Željko Obradović in Partizan and Vasa Micic extending his contract with Anadolu, but nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, we look like two random guys on the mic.
But we're both wearing Michael Jordan t-shirts, and we did not discuss this before, so it's a coincidence, which means probably we're gonna have some good synergy around here.
And we are against Space Jam too, probably.
We're definitely Space Jam OG
we're Team
fans.
Mike, for sure. So that's a good start already.
Yeah, so I could say that I'm a sports freak probably in Lithuania. And
completely. I mean,
sports
don't
commentator.
Be shy.
Yeah, and
you live and breathe basketball actually.
Yeah,
and football also. Sorry, sport.
So I'm a sports commentator,
yeah.
But listen, EuroLeague is like the main thing for me throughout the season, and most broadcasts that I have are EuroLeague games. It's not only Zalgiris, really; it's the whole EuroLeague season, and I'm interested in every team and everything that's happening in EuroLeague, which is why I thought it's a really great idea to do this podcast with you, because you are a guy who has been around for a couple of years as an insider in the basketball world in Europe. And I'm the guy who watches 1 billion games throughout the season, NBA, EuroLeague and everything else. So I think we could have a really good dynamic duo.
Yeah, and we're gonna do a weekly pod during the season, and we're gonna talk mostly about the EuroLeague. But to add about Rytis, I would say that he doesn't like all these good words about him. He's a really great guy who is fully into just doing work, not talking much about it. But Rytis is really okay. Let's just not use the word famous, but well-respected commentator in Lithuania. I have to admit that players, coaches in Lithuania really enjoy you commentating games. So this is kind of, a professional compliment. Nothing like ass licking.
I like how you put it, because I really hate words like famous, greatest, the best, whatever. It's not who I'm trying to be. For me, it's always about quality and professionalism, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the EuroLeague games. And around my teenage years, probably I realized that EuroLeague is something that I'm so passionate about, not just because Žalgiris is the Lithuanian team representing Lithuania, but other clubs are so interesting. There are so many interesting personalities, coaches, players, and I just grew up watching EuroLeague basketball, and on top of that, I haven't missed a single NBA Finals game live since 2005 Detroit-San Antonio series. So I would consider myself a two-dimensional guy who could really have a conversation on both EuroLeague and the NBA, which I really enjoy both.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet, but we're gonna talk about the NBA also during the season when we have some certain topics. But yeah, as Rytis said, he watches a lot of basketball, and he's like a basketball encyclopedia. And I hope to add you with some inside information. I'm talking with EuroLeague teams around Europe and have some feedback about their feelings about some situations, some games, or transfer signings on some processes of the EuroLeague basketball. So I have believed that is going to be really quality podcast. We're not about, let's say, entertaining, not about a show or something. Yeah. We're going to be, straight basketball guys.
Yeah, I mean, we may be not the most charismatic guys around the world, but I hope it will be interesting. And another thing is, which is always important, is feedback, so if you guys like something or you don't like something or you think we should add something, always leave comments. We always enjoy having feedback, whether it's positive or critical. So feel free, and we are hoping that throughout the year our viewership will be expanding, and most of the Europe that have EuroLeague teams will be following us at least a little bit.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about some certain topics, but during the season, we might change the format of the podcast to add something. Maybe we're gonna have some Q&A, sessions with our listeners, our followers. If we will have an audience,
at some point, we might have a button like Charles Barkley has, and I would guarantee something like in the EuroLeague playoffs. But let's see what the future brings.
Okay, and today we're gonna talk since it's a mid-season. Let's say midsummer time. It's July 16th, and it's also kind of finishing point of EuroLeague Free Agency. Most of the teams, completed their rosters. Some of the teams are just it looks like they're just starting building their rosters. But we're gonna express our opinion about, let's say, EuroLeague Free Agency winners and losers so far. And saying losers, we don't mean that these teams are kind of suckers or something like that. Maybe they just lost something which was very important for them, and they couldn't sign players which could be that kind of level. So probably we're gonna start with the winners.
Yeah,
right?
We should start with the positive ones for sure. So listen,
who's your winner
of all
one?
winners, right? Listen, I'm stuck here with two teams, so I really wanted to start with the champions. For me personally, there's another team which I'm really impressed about their homework for the upcoming season, but I just wanted to start with the champions, if that's okay with you.
For sure. So because it's also my number one.
Yeah, because Anadolu, really, we knew all along that it's not about bringing some new guys in. It was all about keeping Vasa and keeping others around him. So if they could do that, we knew that they would have the team that is ready to defend the championship title. And when the news were announced about Vasilij Micic extending his contract, you could place Anadolu Efes among the winners already, because that's the main job. That's what they did. And they are keeping most of the other guys. Only Sertaç Şanlı is leaving for Barcelona, so I believe that they will be just as strong as they were for the past couple of years.
Regarding to Şanlı, I read some quotes of Ataman regarding his departure, and it was just straight Ataman. He even said that he called Şanlı and he told, why you're switching winning team with the runner-ups, what's the idea behind it. So he took this thing pretty simply, but what I want to say, keeping Vasilij Micic was not only very important for Efes, to keep their core, but also let's say avoid the situation where Vasa was joining other EuroLeague team and making it in a much better situation before the season, because CSKA Moscow was really close to signing him. They put a 11 million offer on the table for 3 years, and for Efes it was not so easy to match it. So they did a really good job, because if Vasa was gone, you can only imagine what would have they do on the market, because the point guard market is really dry this summer. You can look at teams like CSKA or Zenit. If CSKA won't be able to bring Kevin Pangos, they're gonna put themselves in a pretty complicated situation, because probably they're gonna take some risks, like maybe Zenit will do with Shabazz and Napier, what we read from all the reports in Europe. So it was really important move for Efes, and probably they got the GM of the year, Executive of the Year award for a reason. I mean, Alper Yilmaz just received it a week ago or something. But it's not only Alper Yilmaz; it's all Efes organization. As far as I know, Ergin Ataman is. I wouldn't say that he's fully responsible for full roster, but he has very strong word on picking the players, and it's a amazing job what he did 3 years ago, building this core and just switching some very small elements of this roster.
Yeah, listen, for Mr. Ataman, I wouldn't even use the word coach. I would say manager, because in football, these type of coaches, like, I don't know, Guardiola or Mourinho, they are called managers, because they are not just coaching a team, they're building a team. And I believe that's what Ergin Ataman has been doing in Anadolu Efes successfully. And I do remember when he first came and he replaced Perasovic, and in that season they were dead last. And they played the last game, I believe, in Baskonia, and they won it. They still finished last, and it was the television interview where Coach Ataman said, next year we're going to come back and we're going to fight for the title. And at that time, it might have sounded a little bit funny, because how are you going to fight for the title with this team that hasn't
Ataman
had any
is famous
success?
for such sayings.
But then they came back really, and they brought all these guys to places. I think the only guy that was with them when they finished last was Krunoslav Simon. All the other guys were built throughout the years.
Maybe Brian Dunstan also?
I'm not sure, but really, probably Krunoslav Simon is the one that remembers that he was with this team when they finished last in the EuroLeague. And so when they built this team, they brought all these players. You cannot underestimate the job that Coach Ataman did. Some might say he's not the biggest tactician, like preparing, but that's not what they need. The modern day basketball is not about sets. It's not about having this playbook with a lot of set plays. It's about having the right spacing and the right players in correct positions and everybody knowing their roles. And when you see them extending a guy like James Anderson, who's an American player with like 12 minutes per game and 2.8 average, but they're extending him because he fits the system. That's like the NBA model. And Anadolu Efes is now the team to follow in Europe, how you build a successful team and how you win championships. So a lot of respect for Gina Ataman, a lot of respect for the club. And another thing, Shane Larkin, I believe he has an option to go to the NBA, but probably he's staying, right?
Yeah, it seems like he's staying.
Yeah, so,
I think so.
Everyone's staying except of Sertac Shanli, which they could replace with Jacques Landale, from what we're hearing. So that would be another addition. And just one more thing about Anadolu, which I wanted to say. Right now, they look like favorites, probably. Title contenders, at least. But in 1 or 2 years' time, they're going to have to rebuild this team. I think eventually Vasilija Micic will go to the NBA.
Yeah, sooner than later.
Most of these guys, they are aging veterans. Dunstan, Simon, Singleton,
Bobois, 43.
Yeah, so in 1 or 2 years' time, there's going to be a massive rebuild. Like in one summer, they will be signing 6 or 7 new players. But for now, I believe the mindset is that we can still have a go. We can still have a shot with this group of guys. And I do respect that. I respect people who have the motivation to defend what they earn. Like Ataman said, they're not one-time, they're two-time EuroLeague champions, but just because of the pandemic, it was not official.
Yeah, I liked you mentioned the word manager, not coach. I remember I was listening to some Serbian podcast, Block po Block, something like that, and Coach Aleksandar Džikić was on that podcast, and probably he was interviewing Ettore Messina with his colleague, and he also mentioned that now coaches became not coaches like we used to it. They are managers right now with such a tough schedule, with such a kind of, let's say, shortage of practices.
Yeah.
When you don't have whole week to change things during the games, it's really like about managing the workload, managing the personalities, managing the players. And Ataman is kind of, he's like following what Pablo Lasso was doing in previous years and why he was so successful with Real Madrid. So it's like another dynasty in the EuroLeague. Like we had Real Madrid, now we have Anadolu Efes, and probably we're going to enjoy this dynasty for at least 1 or 2 years.
They have the financial resources, even when the rebuild comes, they do have the finances to do it correctly, and they do have the personnel and the know-how. So that is very important. And yeah, what you mentioned about coaches being managers as well, it is true that nowadays you don't have that much time to prepare for each game. You don't have that many practices, and it really shows which of those older coaches adapted to the situation. And there are probably some coaches that didn't, and they do not fit in the modern day EuroLeague. And Coach Ataman is one of those who do fit, because really prior to the Anadolu Efes project, we knew him as this very strict guy, Turkish coach who shouts a lot on the sidelines. He had some titles with Galatasaray and some other teams. He coached in Italy, but he had the reputation of this guy who is...
Yeah, he had some crazy punishments, like keeping his players in the hotel until they're gonna win the game, or like, losing the game in Turkish championship when coming home by bus and having a practice at 5 or 6 in the morning. That's at least what players are saying,
And all of a sudden, there's this radical shift to him becoming sort of an NBA type of coach who is man-managing, who is just setting players into the right places. His team, what I like about Anadolu Efes and the way they play, it's the perfect spacing. The EuroLeague court is so narrow compared to the NBA, but they stretch it to the limits, and they have these creators, these playmakers, that they do not need to follow some sets. They know how to play basketball. They know what to do with the ball in their hands. And Vasa Micic, before moving to Anadolu Efes, he had a season with Coach Šaras in Zalgiris. We saw him as sort of talented guy who works on the court.
Some kind of facilitator.
Did you really believe he had it in him to be the MVP?
Not really. I loved Vasa already. Yeah. He was a great backup for Kevin Pangos, or the guy who was playing together with Pangos on the court, but I didn't believe that there's so much potential in him.
Yeah, so this again shows that the player needs environment where he can, show the best version of himself. And once again, credit to Coach Ataman.
Yeah, and the coach also needs the environment where he has full trust from the front office. And what can I say about GM of FS, Alper Yilmaz? He's the one who, if not him, if not the front office of FS, Ataman wouldn't have, so much freedom on picking the players, deciding how to play, how to build a winning team. But Yilmaz is one of these GMs who is giving, full trust on these coaches. And of course, if something is going wrong, then he would make some changes. But now, he did a good job, giving it all to Ataman. And it's just a great, it's just great for Micic staying, not just, from a fan standpoint, but from the EuroLeague standpoint also, because too many great players are heading to the NBA. Too many great players are waiting for the NBA opportunities through the free agency or in summer league. So it's a huge win for the EuroLeague basketball, because it's sad to see, from one side, it's great to see Campazzo, Dek, Vildoza coming to the NBA, but at the same time, I don't see, the same kind of flow coming from the NBA world, to join the EuroLeague teams.
But to be honest, I'm really intrigued to see Vasa Micic in the NBA maybe next season, because...
In a good situation, let's say. Because OKC situation was tricky.
But he would have like guaranteed minutes in there, I believe, because they are rebuilding. They have a young team. If Theo Maledon is getting minutes there, Vasa Micic can just become the main point guard straight away. But why I want to see him in the NBA, and why I wanted to see him even this year, and after the Final Four, I really thought that this is it. This is the goodbye to the EuroLeague, and he is going to the NBA. And that would kind of remind me of how Luka Doncic left the EuroLeague. Of course, he was a teenager. He was much younger at the time than Vasa Micic, and his ceiling is much higher. But the style of play that this Serbian point guard was showing for the past couple of years kind of reminds me of Luka Doncic dominating Europe in that Real Madrid jersey. So if Vasa Micic would have decided to go to the NBA now and take his talents maybe to OKC, I would be very intrigued to see him there. But okay, probably next year or the year after, because as I see, the contract is like 1 + 1 + 1.
Yeah, with NBA outs
every summer he has an NBA out, so eventually it will probably happen.
Okay, so let's go to another Turkish team. I put Fenerbahce Istanbul as my EuroLeague winners of the free agency so far. Because I compare the departures and also the new players coming, and I see that, for example, Pierre Henry replaced Lorenzo Brown. I see that they're gonna have Devin Booker and Akila Polonara instead of Johnny Hamilton, for example, or Kyle Quinn. Also, okay, I'm not so sure yet about Mariel Shayok, what he gonna offer for the team. He was playing in Bursa the last season. He was probably one of the top scorers, scoring 19 points per game in Turkey. But he's going to replace Ulanovas and Gerald Eddy, who couldn't adjust to Kokoškov's game, even though he had hopes that both of them going to be successful. But overall, I I see that this team retained their main players like Guduric, like De Colo, like Jan Vesely. There were many rumors that many of these guys, maybe even all of these guys, gonna leave the team, but they retained their key players, with whom they played good basketball the last season. They also signed players who are already ready to shine. I mean, they already proved themselves in the EuroLeague, comparing to the last season when Fener tried to buy some, let's say, hungry players, just looking for that leap in the EuroLeague. I think that they got deeper, more solid, and if they're gonna find a good chemistry, I think that they're gonna be better than the last season. I don't say that they're gonna be better than the last season in terms of having higher place in the standings, because they already made the playoffs. But at least I see that they're gonna avoid such holes during the season like they had in the beginning, in the first part of the last EuroLeague season.
Yeah, but last season I believe that some of the things were out of control for the club, for the coach. First of all, COVID. Like, if they would have gone to the playoffs with a healthy squad, with Jan Vesely prepared, without any ankle issues, without COVID, they were flying to Moscow without the head coach. It's a problem. However you put it, it is a problem. So they really didn't stand a chance against CSKA, which was beatable at that time. And, and Fenerbahce, on other circumstances, could have made a Final Four. So I do agree with you that probably the signings they made are good. Marko Guduric, when he came last season, he was a game changer. The team looked dead. Remember how they got beat in Kaunas?
Yeah, I remember Meli Mamatoglu, kicking that ball.
Some might have thought it was the last game for Igor Kokoshkov, right? But they believed in him. They said, okay, we're going to bring in Guduric. Maybe some good things will happen in the second part of the season. Last year was like the pandemic year. It was difficult for most of the teams. Anadolu was struggling in the first part of the season because of COVID, because they didn't have any preseason. And so they turned it around. They really played at times some beautiful basketball. However, I still have some doubts about Fenerbahce. And first of all, I'm still not fully convinced that Igor Kokoshkov belongs to those elite coaches in the EuroLeague. You saw what happened with the Serbian national team.
That's concerning.
Sometimes you see that like Fenerbahce plays too predictable. You don't really see a big game plan on defense when they meet these type of teams like Barcelona, Anadolu, and others. So I still have some doubts.
But you can also say that FS play predictable basketball, but now Fener plays predictable basketball, but now they have more talent on the court.
Yeah, but FS have chemistry, which you build throughout the years, right? And this is still a team that is kind of new. Like Pierre Henry is coming in, okay? And this is where I have another doubt. Pierre Henry, I'm not doubting his skill set. He's an extremely athletic point guard. He seems very motivated. He seems very emotional. He can lead the team. He can have those nights with like a double-double, 18 points, 12 assists. He can defend. He defends like crazy. One-on-one defense, he's amazing. But him playing with Nando De Colo, potentially this could be one of the biggest duos in the EuroLeague. However, I do see another scenario where Nando De Colo, I don't know him personally, of course, but I saw a lot of games where he plays. He seems to me like a perfectionist, like a guy who demands 100% from everybody else around him. And Pierre Henry is sort of unpredictable. At times he can be chaotic. At times his decision-making might make the coaches go crazy, right? And if Nando De Colo gets frustrated with Pierre Henry and you don't have chemistry with these two key players of yours, you could have a problem. You have Jan Vesely, one of the best pick-and-roll big men in Europe. He feels comfortable playing with Nando. I do believe he can have a good relationship with Pierre Henry as well. I like the additions of Polonara and Devin Booker. It's okay. It's just that I still have some doubts about Fenerbahce, whether they will be the elite team challenging for the Final Four next season.
Yeah, that's the other question, but probably the main idea is that they really got stronger. They have more talent. And, the question about the call, probably you can raise this question every season or in every team where the call is playing, because he's the guy who really likes to have ball in his hands. And as I said, he's a perfectionist and he's probably not so easy, to play with. But I don't know. I believe that Pierre-Henry still is a big improvement comparing to Lorenzo Brown. Brown is also good. He has good skills, but in my eyes, he just couldn't involve others as probably he should in
Not very
that
consistent.
team. Yeah, it was hard season. I expected a bit better things for them.
Another thing, Achille Polonara, he had his breakthrough season with Baskonia. It will be interesting to see how Igor Kokoshkov sees him in his team, whether he's a 4 or he's a 5. Because last season we saw Kokoshkov really liked going big, like with Vesely at 4, Ahmed Duviroglu starting at 5, sometimes even Vesely playing with Kyle O'Quinn on the court. And it will be interesting to see how he can fit Achille Polonara in this team. Because, for example, in Duško Ivanovic's team, Achille Polonara would be starting as a 4, but finishing games as a 5 because he's good in switch all defense. And he seemed to me like a guy who came to the right place at the right time.
That's true.
I'm still not so sure if Achille Polonara is like a superstar in EuroLeague. There were moments where he was flying like Blake Griffin in his Clippers days, right? And I'm hoping he can do that in Fenerbahce, but I just have some questions because Kokoshkov, he was signing guys like Ulanovas. He knew Ulanovas is going to be there. You should know what are his strengths. I would call that not that Ulanovas did not, meet some criteria. It was mismanagement. If you're not playing to the player's strengths, then why are you signing him?
What was actually surprising, because when he signed him, Kokoshkov told that you don't need to do anything new. It was not usual for you. I saw how you played in Zalgiris and I want you to do the same in Fener.
So he's a post-up player.
But we didn't see any post-up game in Fener.
There were no post-ups for Ulanovas in Fener. So it kind of makes you think if once again, if Kokoshkov knows the EuroLeague that well and knows what players he needs to be successful in EuroLeague. I'm not saying he's a bad coach for sure. I cannot say that.
And it was a first EuroLeague season for him. He gonna make adjustments, and he can also improve in the EuroLeague. But another question is probably if he's gonna stay with Fener. We see all these reports about Dallas Mavericks, Jason Kidd, trying to invite Kokoshkov to the coaching staff. So it's not clear yet. Probably we're gonna know something in the upcoming days. But if they would need to make such a coaching change, it would be crazy because I don't see many good coaches available on the market. With all the respect to coach, for example, Svetoslav Pešić or Djordjevic is also on the market. But I would, I feel that Fener probably would look for another crazy scenario like Kokoshkov was, to invite somebody from the NBA environment.
But that's another thing. If you are searching for a new coach midsummer, that coach is going to come in. He's going to coach somebody else's team because the new coach did not sign these players.
Yeah.
Of course, any coach should be able to work with De Colo and Vesely. That's a fact. But still, when you are starting with a new team, you would like to have a say in what players we are signing. And it would be difficult for a new coach, I believe, to come here and create his system and be successful in the first year. You need time, but that's the good part. I do see that Fenerbahce management, they are patient. If they didn't sack Kokoshkov after that beating in Kaunas, it means they are patient, they are willing to give time, they are willing to wait. They were all learning from Željko Obradović. They realized how hard it is to win titles in EuroLeague, how hard it is to be in the Final Four consecutive years. So I do believe that this club is in the right hands, they have the right management to be successful in the future. But next season, I still have some doubts about them.
Okay, what else do you have on your EuroLeague
I really wanted
winners?
to talk about Real Madrid.
Okay.
You may not agree with me on this one.
At least not completely, let's say.
But listen, I do like what they have done. In the context of Florentino Perez, club's president, constantly speaking in the media about the financial collapse in pandemic years, how football doesn't have any money, how they cannot sign any big players for the football team. And you do think, hearing this, do they have anything for basketball? And they probably used the money they got from the buyouts of Campazzo and Dec, and they used money wisely, I would say. So I will extend my thoughts about Real Madrid signings. Last year, they were not playing Real Madrid basketball, Pablo Lasso did not have the instruments. He had to adjust. They became a more defensive, slow team. But we know that Real Madrid's basketball is fast-paced, transition-free, very talented, creative point guards. The team is running and gunning, and they needed players to do that. So they got out and signed Thomas Hurtel, who's a scoring point guard, has loads of experience, and at this point, I believe he will have a lot of motivation to prove himself after what happened in Barcelona. I believe that's a great signing. And then they signed Nigel Williams-Goss, extremely athletic point guard who loves to play fast breaks. I saw his games in Krasnodar last season. He seemed improved as a shooter from comparison his season in Olympiacos. He's so confident. He's good on defense. He seemed like easily coached. No problems with him at all.
Yeah, Nigel is really a great kid.
Yeah, so
from what I've heard, he's a very smart, well-educated guy, and he for sure would have been an upgrade for probably every EuroLeague team.
So again, a player that I believe fits the system, and with these 2 point guards, they can get back to playing Real Madrid basketball. And then you look at the big guys. Vincent Poirier, he joined last season, but he couldn't play in the EuroLeague, right? He could only play in the Spanish league.
Yeah.
And now he's joining the team for the full season. So you have 2 centers. You have Walter Tavares, who is the biggest impact maker on the court in the whole EuroLeague. He's like the center who impacts every single shot that the opponents take from the paint. On the other side, you see him as an improved offensive player. He brings double-doubles consistently. He's, again, a great character. Amazing. And then you have another center, Poirier, who, before leaving for the NBA, in Baskonia was one of the best pick-and-roll centers on the offensive end in EuroLeague. So that's great balance. And then you have another problem. Anthony Randolph is in a rehab from his Achilles injury. It's a horrible injury, and it takes time to come back, and not every player comes back as strong as he was. So what do? You sign Gershon Yabusele for the power forward spot, which is a player, I believe, that is kind of underrated. From what I saw last season playing in Aswell, he's such a good passer. Everyone's talking about what he can bring on defense. He has a strong body, but he's such a good passer. And that's another thing that Pablo Lasso needs in his team, players who can pass the ball. So with these signings, I do see Real Madrid coming back to the elite. I do see them doing big things. Even last season with all these problems, they were so close to the Final Four. They were in the finals of the Copa del Rey and the Spanish League. So you trust Coach Lasso because last season he has proven that this is his team and he knows what he's doing. This is why I like what Real Madrid has done this summer.
Yeah, listening to you, I'm already started, to love what Real Madrid was doing this summer. There are just some, question marks I can make.
Okay.
First of all, if Nigel Williams-Goss, he still didn't prove himself as a solid EuroLeague playmaker who can lead the team. He didn't have a great season in Olympiacos. He didn't play in the NBA. Later, he joined the Eurocup team, but he still has a lot to prove. I like Gershon Yabusele. For me, he's like a poor version of Boris Dio. I see similarities between their assists too, not just because of their game style. Poirier for sure it's an upgrade comparing to probably we have to compare him with Alex Tyus.
So he's better.
Yeah,
for sure better.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Real Madrid actually didn't sign any solid backup center the last season, and they give a lot of responsibilities for Usman Garuba, which future is also probably not so clear so far. We're gonna see.
He's a lottery pick, so we are assuming he would be leaving for the NBA.
If he's staying, that's also another upgrade for Real Madrid because he's for sure gonna be better. Thomas Hurtel. Also, he's very skilled, talented guy, but probably it's a matter of how he gonna adjust the team, how he gonna change the chemistry of the team because there were some question marks about his personal abilities. But in a long-term situation, I see that he might be a better player than, for example, Nicolas Laprovitola was for Real Madrid.
He's like more experienced in the EuroLeague level and. He's a scoring point guard, and that's what Real Madrid needed last season. They were craving for someone who can score from this point guard position because Carlos Alocen, he's growing, he's developing, but it's too early to give him like 20 minutes in EuroLeague. And now they have a full roster. We know that Pablo Lasso loves rotation. He loves going deep in his roster, using like 14 players. Some guys play on Thursday night. Yeah, if Adam Hanga is coming, then
they just announced.
That's another good
Barcelona
addition.
just announced that he's leaving, so he's on his way to Real Madrid.
So now Real Madrid, they are keen on signing guys who have played in Spain. That they don't need that much time. They know the league, they know the environment, and Pablo Lasso is using his full roster. Like some guys play on Thursday night in a EuroLeague regular season game, then other guys get more minutes on Sunday night in the Spanish league game, and he's sort of a coach who treats EuroLeague regular season like the NBA regular season, where you have like a paper where you have written this guy enters the game like in the middle of the second quarter, then this guy enters in the third, and it works for him. But last season he couldn't do that because he didn't have the depth in his squad. They lost some key players. They could not replace them. They had injuries and all these problems, and he just had to depend on Walter Tavares playing like 36 minutes. And now they can get back to who they are. And when you raise those question marks, I believe these are good question marks about Ertel, about Williams-Goss. Of course, he still has to prove himself. I just believe these guys fit the style of play that Real Madrid plays, and that's all. And they are still surrounded by veterans. They're surrounded by shooters. They're not depending on Sergio Llull, for example, as much as they were before his injuries. Now he can be the guy who comes for 10 or 12 minutes to give some energy. That's it.
But in the end of the day, why I said that, I cannot completely agree with you, even though I agree with you in a big part of it. I just think that, Facundo Campasso, Gabriel Deck are still, better players than Nigel Williams-Goss and Gershel Yabusele. Okay, Poirier and Ertel is improvement comparing to other guys, but still, I compare the team of Real Madrid, which started the last season, to this one, which they're gonna start for the next season. So
but in this situation,
okay, that
changes.
I would say that they made their best to find good pieces, to replace all these great guys.
Because I would say it's Hanga replacing Deck more than Yabusele replacing Deck. Gabriel Deck was playing more like in the free spot.
So maybe Yabusele is replacing Garuba, let's say, potentially.
Potentially, because Deck moved to the 4 when Randolph tore his Achilles, but mainly he was playing as a free, and he was playing very aggressive, and we know how good he was. Hanga brings defense on the table. He can be good on offense as well. Maybe he was not used that much in Barcelona in Jasikevicius' team, but he can be good on offense as well. He's very athletic, has this crazy wingspan. And I really like when you said about Yabusele, that comparison with Boris Diaw, because I do see him as well as a player with a very high basketball IQ, which I like, which I always admire, especially for the big guys. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, this is it. I mean, this is my list of clear winners of free agency. Do you have anything else? Because I have some borderline winners, let's say.
Well, I wanted to mention not like the biggest winners, but the team that I believe will make a strong comeback after last season, which was kind of frustrating, is Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Okay.
I wanted to mention them because I also believe they made good signings, but at the same time, just because they're trusting Yanis Varopoulos, I believe he's a great coach.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Last season, they were so unlucky. They lost so many games with buzzer beaters, overtimes. They were
late with signing the players because their season in Israel took longer than everybody else.
So they're definitely playoff material, just they couldn't prove it last year. And now the additions. Jalen Reynolds is coming back. He played in Maccabi previously, but when he did that, he was not so good. We didn't know his abilities. He was probably just a center for a short term. They had Otello Hunter. Now he is coming back to Tel Aviv after a very strong season with Bayern. And we do see him as one of the best centers, best pick and roll centers right now in EuroLeague. He needs to be coached. He needs to be managed. He needs control. And that's where Yanis Varopoulos comes in. A coach, which I believe is a very strong personality, and he can coach guys like Jalen Reynolds. And Derek Williams is one of my favorite Americans in EuroLeague. Just because of his IQ, because
But we didn't see his full potential here in Europe, right? Would you agree?
Well,
or in Munich, you think that he had the best
Bayern,
season in Europe?
I believe in Bayern he at times looked like LeBron James version in EuroLeague.
He was all over the place actually.
You could compare him to Will Clyburn at that time. Well, maybe he's more of a forward than a free. And Maccabi is a club that has a great tradition with American players. American players that may not play so well in Spain or in other countries, but they find themselves very happy in Tel Aviv. And Derek Williams is such a smart player. He's a smart guy. I mean, he has some issues. His three-point shot, he's inconsistent attacking from distance, but he's very athletic, very smart. He immediately, when he came to the EuroLeague, gave me the impression that this is the guy who could take a big paycheck in China, because he's a high draft pick in the NBA. He has the reputation. He could go there. But he seems hungry for basketball and for winning. And that's a great addition to any team. And I do believe that we will see a great season from Derek Williams because he was not so great in Fenerbahce, in Valencia. He had some moments, but he also had some injuries. And I rate him very highly. Like I said, he's one of my favorite American players in EuroLeague.
Yeah, and when we talk about Fenerbahce or Valencia, it seems like he was, let's say, coached too much in these teams. We know Željko's system, how strict he is with his roles in his team. And then in Valencia, it seemed like, Derek Williams was not himself because maybe Ponsarnau didn't give him so much freedom. He was not so important, not, let's say, key player in his offensive game, which was a bit strange. So it was not, Derek was not in his own shoes. But yeah, as you said, Maccabi is that team which usually gives freedom to the players. And even though if Sfairopoulos is the coach who is known for controlling his team, I see a big difference from Sfairopoulos in Olympiacos and with Sfairopoulos in Maccabi, because he also adjusted. Because in Israel, in Tel Aviv, you have to adjust to the players and to the culture you have in your hands. And yeah, James Nunnally is another amazing addition.
Veteran shooter.
Yeah, veteran shooter, the guy who's all these guys makes this team so entertaining, so attractive to watch. And my only question is, I also think that they are winners. They had a really important summer. They were building the team, and it was a very tough time for the team, to make some important decisions. But I see a lot of offensive potential. But at the same time, there is a question if Giannis, gonna control all these egos on the court, all these players who would like to have ball in their hands, and how all these guys like Wilbekin, also we have Keenan Evans, unexperienced EuroLeague
Cameron
rookie.
Taylor.
Yeah, Cameron Taylor. I mean, there are still some question marks how they're gonna fit team chemistry and winning basketball.
Well, for sure, I cannot say that much about Taylor or Evans. Sometimes you gamble with these type of players. Great scorer in Israeli league doesn't necessarily mean he will be a great scorer in the EuroLeague. So yes, there are some positions where probably they're gambling, but Scottie Wilbekin needs help. This is what we learned, especially last year. He's a guy who has some constant problems with his ankles. He gets injured a lot. He's a streaky shooter. On some nights, he seems unstoppable, but there are some nights where he just cannot make a shot, and he seems like nervous, not happy on the court, but he can be a leader. I'm expecting a strong season from Scottie Wilbekin. I'm expecting that he will take a lot from what happened last year and will be better this season. And another thing I wanted to say about Derek Williams, you mentioned his situation with Željko Obradović and in Valencia. The good thing is that when he was in these spots, he did not seem like...
He didn't make problems.
He didn't make problems. He did not seem that he's unhappy, that he is displeased. He just did what the coach told him. And that's it. He worked hard on the court. And he even said that Željko Obradović in his book is next to LeBron James in terms of basketball IQ, which means he realized that Željko is coaching him and he is doing all these right things. It's just that maybe this season they are not clicking so well. Once again, this shows that he is a smart basketball player.
Yeah, okay. And I also have my borderline winners.
Okay.
And I think that, CSKA Moscow Kevin Pangos away from being the winners of this EuroLeague Free Agency, because if they're gonna manage, to sign him finally, it would be a huge improvement for their backcourt, which already looks amazing. You have Daniel Hackett. Now they're gonna have Alexei Shved, who has a done deal with CSKA. They also kept Ife Lundberg, also bring Marius Grigonis, so it's unbelievable backcourts. And only question is, how Coach Itude is gonna spread all these minutes and how he gonna make all these guys happy. But Pangos would be a huge addition. The only problem is that I'm hearing that there is some serious NBA interest from the NBA, and he's for sure waiting for the free agency. There are some rumors that maybe there is one NBA team who can give promise for Kevin to bring him to the NBA. And if that happens, if he's going to the NBA, it's going to be really hard for CSKA to find somebody to replace him, because it seems like they also have a, let's say, agreement with Kevin. If you're not going to the NBA, you're going to play for CSKA Moscow. And if Pangos is gone, they're gonna have to take some risks, probably to sign somebody from the NBA market, let's say borderline NBA players, and it's gonna be a big bet in my eyes. And but if Kevin is coming to Moscow, it's gonna be a great team, because we cannot forget that Nikola Milutinov will be on the team. Ife Lundberg, as I said, he finds some chemistry in Moscow, and all the other players. I mean, it's a great, complete roster they have. And even with all these problems, Mike James situation, he was in and out, all these problems like injuries, Milutinov, COVID situation, they were, let's say, very close of making EuroLeague finals. I mean, they challenged their opponents in the semifinals, and they were not so far away. So with all these improvements, again, they're going to be complete title contenders for the next season.
Well, I do have to agree, but listen, the signing of Alexei Shved, it's...
that's another topic.
And it's an interesting one. For the past, I could say couple of years, but in pandemic, there was a season that did not finish, and players were not playing basketball. But let's say for the last 3 years, Alexei Shved was playing sort of G League basketball. Will he convert back to playing EuroLeague basketball, where you have to be competitive, where you have to make sacrifices for the team, where you have to listen to your coach? You will not be a 36 minutes per game guy who takes 25 shots. It's impossible in this team. You will have to adjust to the situation. I mean, Coach Itude is great for talented offensive players, because CSKA Moscow is another modern EuroLeague team that does not have too many sets. They put emphasis on spacing, on the numbers game, from which positions they want to attack, and mismatches. Dimitris Itoudis is one of the best at finding mismatches where they can attack the opponent. Like you mentioned, the semifinal of the EuroLeague, Will Clyburn was just going like a train, because that was the mismatch they had, and they needed to use it, and they use it to the limits. But Alexei Shved, how do you see this working? I mean, do you believe this summer, after what happened in Hinkie, maybe Alexei Shved, I don't know, had a dialogue with himself where he said, listen, I still want to be a champion. I want to win things. Of course, he's talented enough, but you did not see him on Hinkie like he's hungry for trophies or something like that. You saw him in this environment where he can just do what he wants, win or lose, whatever. He has his 20 points per game and his 9 assists. Doesn't matter the field goal percentage or the turnover ratio. How do you see this?
I don't see Alexei having this conversation with himself, because he's so easygoing and relaxed person off the court, and he's still in LA, spending his summertime, and he's really relaxed about his situation.
Okay, but Coach Itoudis is demanding. He's demanding effort.
That's the biggest question. Why the hell they were inviting Alexei Shved after having this Mike James experience? Because I see a lot of similarities also in their game style. They're both offensively, let's say, two of the most talented scorers in the EuroLeague. but neither of them already proved that they can be, leaders of the winning team when we talk about the EuroLeague. And that's the question which Alexei didn't give us an answer yet. He can be a leader for let's say bottom EuroLeague team or like playoff contenders, and I don't see him, let's say, accepting the role of being just a role player like maybe he was back in the day when he was playing for Jonas Kozlauskas. Probably it was at Ettore Messina when he was just a small piece of all the CSKA picture. So that's the crazy question, because I know that Vatutin and Itudis, they probably had mixed opinions on Alexei and if he can succeed with this team. And I believe that both of them don't have that answer, but the thing is that they also needed some good Russian players. Alexei's price was not so high because first of all, he already earned a lot during his career, and also there are some rumors that some sponsors of Hinkie, they were responsible for the contract, not the club, and maybe they're gonna pay the difference of the new Shved's contract with CSKA and the last one with Hinkie. But
Dimitris Atudis is concerned about winning basketball games and coaching his team, and he showed with Mike James that he's not going to make compromises because this player has a contract, and
maybe they made some agreements. If there will be some problems, they're gonna cut Shved like they did with Mike James. I don't know. I'm just it's crazy for me to understand when they have so much so many problems with Mike, and it seems like they're stepping on the same problem again, on the same risk.
Well, first of all, I'm kind of offended with the comparison because Mike James is like one of my favorite players.
But I would pick Mike James over Shved, actually.
I would definitely pick Mike James over Shved if we talk about basketball. There are some things we cannot know what happens inside the dressing room of the team, and Mike James was suspended 2 times. And it was not because he is like playing bad. He was like the MVP of the first part of the EuroLeague season. And he was MVP of December or some other month. And it seemed like he's having the best season of his career. But then something happened. And with Alexei Shved, the problems we're talking about mainly are related to basketball. Because he is not labeled as a bad guy. I never heard from anyone that he's like a dressing room problem.
There is some narrative, let's say, but yeah, he's not a bad guy.
But even from Lithuanians that coached him or played with him, they all say that in practices he's just a normal guy. Like he's not the one who gets into conflicts or something like that. But once again, now he's gonna be coached. With all due respect to Rimas Kurtinaitis, Alexei Shved was not coached in Hinkie.
And it's not Hinkie where Shved was bigger than the club.
Yeah.
He's now only a part of the big club.
Yeah. And when you mentioned Kevin Pangos, well, of course, if Pangos would join CSKA, I do see Pangos and Hackett as an amazing duo. I mean, Hackett is the experienced guy who can make others around him better. If Pangos has some issues on defense, Hackett is there to cover. And Hackett improved as a shooter. He has been playing for CSKA so great. I would say for the last couple of years, he was their second best player after Will Clyburn. And of course, Clyburn had injuries, but he came back and he's just as strong as he was.
Yeah, my only regret is that Hackett is getting older. He's already at 32 or 33, something like that. So that's my only regret, because he was just wonderful in the past few years.
But I think he still has
He's 34 actually. He's gonna be 34 in December. Wow.
From what I see, I believe he still has like 2 good seasons in him in this level. You have all these other guys like Marius Grigonis coming in for Darren Hilliard, I would say, in the shooting guard spot. We know Marius very well. We know what he can bring to the team. But when you see all these signings of Shved, maybe Pangos, they still have Hackett, you're going to have to compete for your minutes. It will not be easy. They will have a really deep roster.
Yeah, and all these guys have big egos, so that's another thing of being a good manager.
But it's good that you mentioned Nikola Milutinov. He's coming back. Before that injury, the first few months for him were kind of hard. Dimitris Atudis was not used to playing with these type of bigs because in the past he was successful with centers like Kyle Hines, like Otello Hunter, and now he got Milutinov and Shengelia. So he had to change his game style a little bit, but Milutinov had a breakthrough. He had an amazing month. He was crashing the boards, and then the injury happened. But he will come back, and he will be one of the best centers in EuroLeague for sure. And I think also that Tornike Shengelia could have a better season than the first one. Yeah. Because the first year, I understand, were not so easy for him. He changed the environment from playing in Baskonia, where he was appreciated by everyone. He was their key player. He was the star man. And he went to CSKA, where the demands are so high. Every year you have to be in a Final Four, you have to be a champion, and you're not necessarily the main guy now. And it also took time for him to adjust. Yeah, and I think in the second season he can be much better.
Probably, and as far as I know, he's working a lot with his shooting mechanics. He's probably completely changing his shot. The last year, his 3-point percentage was only 31. So if he's gonna improve, if he's gonna improve in this area, and as you said, there will be some natural adjustment and natural improvement of being, playing in CSKA for the second season. Yeah, that's also another upgrade for.
It's good to hear that, because Dimitris Itoudis, he loves those guys that can stretch the floor. Like the stretch four, he needs that. He had Alec Peters, he had Andrei Vorontsevich, he has Johannes Voigtman that really fits the system as a stretch four, and Tornike Shengelia mainly playing as a power forward. If he can improve his shooting, he will help the team a lot.
I mean, when we talk about all these pieces of CSKA, everything seems to be so solid, so logical. But I'm trying to imagine that conversation. Probably it was in the bar, about the idea, how they come up with the idea to sign Alexei Shved. Some shots of vodka would have been, should have been on that table, because he brings some nasty, on that team.
Well, that's Russia. I mean,
it just Alexei
Shved probably himself. He needs to be in Moscow. He doesn't want to be in Krasnodar or anywhere else. He wants to be in Moscow. He has business there. His wife wants to be there probably.
And for example, if he was about to leave Russia, I would have imagined him in Efes, actually. I think that he would fit Ataman's system, and maybe Real Madrid, because they're also playing the game which, Alexei would fit in.
But there are so many red flags for these clubs.
When you talk about Alexei, there's always red flags.
No disrespect to Alexei Shved, no. But I mean, if he was ambitious, he would have never left the NBA, in my opinion. Because it's not like he left the NBA for Real Madrid or Barcelona, where he could win titles. He left the NBA for Hinkie. First of all, playing in Eurocup, then EuroLeague, but it's Hinkie. If we look at his talents and his skills, of course he can play in the NBA. He can be a 12 points per game guy on a mediocre NBA team. But I don't know, he probably didn't have any ambitions to be there and to prove something, to get on a winning team, to have a role, maybe make a run in playoffs at some point. Probably he didn't have any ambitions at all, and just thought like, oh, Hinkie, they have a good offer for me. I will be like Tsar in there. Yeah. So I'm going there. And for Dimitris Itoudis, I believe every player needs to be ambitious, because he has proven that he will not tolerate a player who might disrespect the team or disrespect the rules. That's what happened with Mike James. So
it's just going to be one more reason why it will be fun to watch CSKA basketball the next season.
That for sure. And of course, it will be interesting for us to see Marius Grigonis as well, joining an elite team that plays in the Final Four every year.
And probably the last borderline winner we should mention is Barcelona, I think. I mean, it's not like they made some huge signings. Their only new guy is Sertac Shanli, and Rokas Jokubaitis' contract announcement is also, coming to be soon. But when we talk about Barca and when we talk about Charas, it's very important to understand how important for him is the continuity of the club, how important for him it was to keep the core. And when you remember his years in Zalgiris, it was also, a long journey of, going step by step, game by game, season by season. and it's really great to see Barca extending Corey Higgins, for example, and we're gonna wait, to see what they're gonna sign for the backup point guard position to play with Nick Kalatis. There are rumors that Nicolas Laprovitola will join the team. There were rumors that Nikola Kalinic gonna replace Hanga, but surprisingly he went to Red Star. So we're still waiting all these signings, but I think these signings gonna be good. These signings gonna be with the idea how Sharas, when we talk about Sharas, he sees basketball in different eyes and he sees his players in some specific roles. So I have no doubts that he's gonna find right pieces. But yeah, they kept all the core and they already had a great season with winning Spanish Cup, Copa del Rey, also ACB Championship, and they were a runner-up team in the EuroLeague. So it was already a great season, great base to build something huge, what Sharas is trying to do over there in Barca.
It was a season with great results, but not necessarily the best basketball they can bring.
You're not a fan of Barca basketball, right?
Well, I wouldn't put it this way. I would just say that last season, it was not completely Sharas' team.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got, especially from the playoff series with Zenit. It was so difficult for them to beat Xavi Pascual. I believe Barcelona is a work in progress. It's just that Jasikevicius needs to make his signings. When he got the job, it really wasn't his team. There were players...
Yeah, that's a fact. He mentioned it.
Yeah, there were players that, he probably... Corey Higgins is the best shooting guard in EuroLeague. I cannot imagine any coach that would say, I don't want Corey Higgins on my team. It would be crazy. But there were guys like Thomas Hurtel and some others that not necessarily Sharas sees in his plans. Okay, so step by step, some players they don't need are leaving. Some players they do need are joining. Sertac Shanli, it's an interesting one, right?
Oh yeah.
If we would talk about Shanli 2 years ago, what we would say? We would say, well,
he's that guy probably.
He's a Turkish guy on a Turkish team because they need some Turkish players, so he just fills the roster. He's like a third center behind Dunstan and Plyce. Then last year, the pick and pop, the pick and roll, scoring, offensive rebounds, his quick hands, everything.
Yeah, a lot of credit goes to Vasa Micic, of course, and Shane Larkin. Yeah, but he's going to have great guards in Barca too.
And the guy is like 27, I believe. It's not like he's 20 years old and he made his progress. He's 27 and now he's beginning to play his best basketball and getting his best contract. 29, so he's almost
his peak. Yeah.
He's almost a veteran. And it will be interesting to see how Sharas wants to use a guy like this. I do imagine the idea that they have to face Real Madrid a lot throughout the season. So we get one of the best pick and pop centers and we attack Walter Tavares in these matchups all the time. Because you do have Brennan Davis as well, very mobile, very athletic center. You do have Piero Riola, the captain of the team, and then you add Sertac Shanli. So I'm really waiting to see what other signings they will make. But anyways, it's a great roster, and they have the coach that can lead the team to titles. He has proven that last season. They had difficulties, they had bumps, but they still won the double in Spain, and they were in the finals of the EuroLeague.
Okay, so let's go with losers.
Well, yeah, let's go with those teams that didn't make such a good impression on us.
And again, it's not about the bad management mostly, just about the huge departures.
Well, EuroLeague is a budget league anyway, so sometimes you just cannot get a player as good as the one that played for you previously because you don't have that much money.
You cannot cope with all these powerhouses.
Like, we're not going to mention Zalgiris among the losers, but how do you replace Thomas Walkup? How do you find someone who is just as good as Thomas Walkup with the wallet that Zalgiris has? It's probably impossible. So you look for some other guys that can bring some other things to the team. So yeah, talking about losers, first of all, I wanted to mention Unix Kazan. They are coming from EuroCup, but why I would consider them as the losers in the market? Because when you are making this next step from EuroCup to EuroLeague, I personally would expect this team to keep the spine, to keep the coach, to keep the key players. But Coach Priftis left for Panathinaikos. Jamar Smith left the team. They extended Isaiah Cannon, who was like the mini version of Shane Larkin in the Euro Cup, but he's not as consistent. He's a liability on defense. They still need like 2 signings, point guard, shooting guard, and also a center, I believe. I like the addition of Will Thomas, but they had great bigs last year. They were a good offensive team. Dimitris Priftis seemed like a coach who knows how to, I don't know, work with these American-style players and play the game the way they are, the way that's best for them. And now all of these changes, and they're changing their whole team. Why? I wanted them to keep the same team and go to the EuroLeague.
Probably, not everything was in their own hands. For example, when we talk about Priftis, I was hearing that he was really missing home, not also because of the COVID, because families couldn't follow the players and the coaches, and he was missing home because he worked, outside the country for many years. So, maybe it was a really personal decision for him to go back home and to coach, a team of your country, one of the biggest teams in the history of Greek basketball. So maybe it was improvement for him, and it was not in the UNIC's front office hands to retain him.
Maybe, but listen.
But for example, Jamar Smith was so surprising.
He's 34 years old.
I love him in Kazan, and now he's going to, probably, but UNIC also has money, and so Bahçeşehir here probably paid him a lot, but I don't see why UNIC couldn't match it.
It's hard to digest because you're going to EuroLeague. Jamar Smith is 34 years old. He's a proven leader on your team. You should do everything to keep him. I don't believe that this Turkish team has so much money that UNIC Kazan cannot match it. So, and regarding Dimitris Priftis, it is strange because he coached UNIC for 4 years. He led them to the EuroLeague, and now when they got to the EuroLeague, he's going. And they replaced him with Coach Perasovic. Coach Perasovic, last we saw him in EuroLeague, it seemed like he's a little bit outdated. I know he also loves the fast-paced basketball. He was successful at some point in Baskonia. But when you saw this, like they're replacing Priftis with Perasovic, it's not like you think, oh, that's immediate success. Vice versa. You're thinking he could be one of the first coaches to get sacked next season because, like, Coach Perasovic, we didn't hear anything about him for the past couple of years, right? Mm-hmm. Once again, it's a strange move, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm very intriguing, to see and to wait what they're gonna sign because so far they're, let's say, for me it would be, it looks like it would be hard for them even to compete for the Eurocup title with this roster. So we wait for some great signings.
Andrei Vorontsevich,
which is good.
EuroLeague champion, man. Nah, but Will Thomas signing is great.
Yeah, that's the move I like the most. And that's why I'm sad, I feel bad for Zenit because I love him in St. Petersburg.
But still, they are 3 or 4 signings away from playing quality EuroLeague basketball and competing. Well, I do believe that they should be going to EuroLeague thinking top 8, making the playoffs.
Yeah.
This club played in with EuroLeague
the roster and the game they played the last year, they could have been, playoff contenders. Right now, I don't see them, being higher than 15th seed or something like that.
And in the past, they were in the EuroLeague playoffs. Yeah. I do remember their series with Barcelona.
Kate Langford times or not?
Not sure. They had like a guy, Henry Domerkant, back in the days. It was a very defensive team.
Okay.
But they did make the playoffs.
Domerkant was great, actually. Yeah.
So that's one of the losers, I would say, on my list.
When you go so high, you fell down, with so much pain, and it was difficult for Bayern Munich, let's say, to keep that level when they were already an overachievers. And who have thought, that Wade Baldwin and Jalen Reynolds gonna be one of the, let's say, best players of the EuroLeague season the last year. So it was really tough task for Bayern Munich front office to replace them. But, in the end of the day, I have to say that these, departures were too painful for the team. And I have to say that they are kind of, losers in terms of what they lost and what they bring. I know that they didn't have any chance, and didn't have any hope, let's say, to keep Jalen Reynolds. It was a bit different story with Wade Baldwin. And also, when we talk about these two guys, we talk about two guys who were, scored 29 points per game combined. And it was, I checked, top 8 EuroLeague teams, and neither of any other, teams didn't have such a, big loss in terms of scoring, in terms of having such a great duo like Reynolds and Baldwin. And Bayern had some hopes to keep Baldwin. What is interesting that he had some bad feedback from German league because he was too problematic for the referees, maybe for the whole image of the German league. But the funny thing is that of course Bayern was the leaders in technical fouls in the EuroLeague, 27 technical fouls, 7 of them for Baldwin. And I was surprised by all these rumors about the German league, and them being concerned about Wade Baldwin. It was, let's say, said that, he was like persona non grata in Germany, which is funny because I don't know what are the rules in Germany, but for example, in LKL, when you get a technical, you pay €60 for the league. You can be fined for flopping in LKL for €100, and for the ejection, there's a fine of €300. So I think that Wade Baldwin, was making the German Bundesliga, let's say, richer league with his presence in the tournament. But yeah, to be serious, when Unix was also involved in the negotiations with Baldwin, it was clear that Bayern won't be able, to keep him, because when we talk about Bayern, maybe we think about the football club behind it, but it's not like in Barca, it's not like in Real Madrid.
They're not putting football money in.
Yeah, and they're let's say they're living from themselves, from ticketing, from marketing, and basketball club is a completely separate, let's say, organization, community, and they don't have all these money. So it was just impossible to keep a player like Wade Baldwin. And we see that they're signing Corey Walden. I like Darun Hillard, but it's just impossible to replace the players in terms of what kind of impact they were making the last year.
Well, I have to quote the great Joel Embiid. Trust the process.
Okay.
And the process is Andrea Trinchieri, right?
Which is big victory for Bayern.
No one is under this utopia that Bayern is going to make the playoffs every year now. But they have some young guys who can develop. They have some players like, Jan Shishko, for example, that can get better. If they do sign Corey Walden, I would say it's a strong point guard. He has proven himself in Belgrade. They need a center. That's obvious. They will need to sign a center, and they will have to look probably at those guys that are rejected by the NBA to find their new Jalen Reynolds. But I do agree that they are losers of the market because they lost too much. But you just have to believe that Andrea Trinchieri knows what he's doing, and he will have the right pieces. And another thing, Vladimir Lucic is really one of the best small forwards in EuroLeague. So you still have a guy to build around.
Oh, yeah.
If he stays healthy, he's elite. He's a great player. And the squad, the roster may not look like a playoff material, and it doesn't have to be. For Bayern, what is success for Bayern? If they finish 10th place, would you say it's a success? I would say yeah.
Yeah, it's a good season. They're playoff contenders all the time.
If it's like a 50% winning season, like 17-17, it seems good. And now, if the pandemic is gone, they can fill the arena. If the fans are back, they can generate more money, and they could get stronger in the future. So I don't see so many problems for them. Of course, Baldwin and Reynolds were great, but you knew it. You knew it was going to happen. It was like something you couldn't control. Yeah, okay, but let's wait and see, because last season, prior to the last season, if we were talking about Bayern, we wouldn't have imagined that they would have such a journey where they were this close to beating Milano.
Yeah, because we can remember that Wade Baldwin, who he was the guy who had a fight in the practice. He couldn't adjust in Olympiacos. Jalen Reynolds was also, we knew that he's a really athletic guy. He's fun to watch, but we didn't expect that, he can contribute as such an important center for the top 8 team who had probably the best fairy tale story of the year. So maybe that's the path to follow for Corey Walden. That's the path to follow for Darun Hillard, to regain his confidence, regain his stock. And yeah, a lot of depends on who they're going to sign for the front line. Although I like Paul Zipser extension. I would love to see DJ Seeley on the team, but it seems like he's leaving probably. But yeah, as you said, when there's a Trinchieri, a huge victory, contract extension for him, there's a lot of hopes that they can be great contenders for the playoff position again.
And another team I want to mention is Panathinaikos. They took so long to find a coach. They announced Dimitris Priftis, I don't know, quite recently. And they seem like a little late with signing players.
June 26, yeah.
Extending Giannis Papapetrou is, of course, a big achievement for them. He's a key player. He's like the face of the team right now. So is the big guy, Papagiannis. But they lost Mitoglou, one of the better Greek players, I would say, and he's going to Milano. And just as it was in the past years, they are filling these spots in the roster with unproven American players, which they usually fire in like December and they sign new ones. And I'm just afraid it's going to happen all over again. Seeing Kendrick Perry, Daryl Macon, all these guys. Okay, Okaro White is someone that the coach knows. He coached him in Unix. It should be fine. But then again, you have a team that's dependent on Nemanja Nedovic. And why is that bad? Nemanja Nedovic is a very talented player. I have nothing against him. I have no doubts about his skills. But he gets injured all the time. So if you are building a team around Nemanja Nedovic, it means you're building the team around a guy who misses like 30% of the regular season games. And I just don't believe they can be a winning team. Although Dimitris Priftis seems like a really good coach, and he's going to Greece, and he's going to coach one of the biggest clubs in Greece. But I don't know. I just don't have a good feeling about them.
Yeah, it seems like the Panathinaikos cannot find their identity after Nikolatis left. And it's much easier to build a team around Nick because he's kind of the found base of the team. And when we saw all these signings again of unproven American players, it was different because it was all about Nick. Papagiannis was also a good piece. Papapetrou later joined the team. So you always knew that with Nick, you're gonna be for sure a playoff team, and with some good signings, with some luck, you might be a Final Four contender. Right now. If their identity is to build a team around Nemanja Nedovic, okay.
What's the situation with Mario Hezonja?
It's not clear yet, actually. There are a lot of hopes that he's going to stay. For sure, that would be a great addition for the team, a great situation for the team. But I'm not sure if he solves, Panathinaikos problems. I'm just, as I said, I don't see their identity yet. And yeah, as I said, if their identity is to build a team around Nemanja Nedovic, you have to take in mind all these risks you mentioned.
Okay, Hezonja, if he stays, of course, he makes them better. We saw it last season already when they were not making the playoffs, but they got Mario Hezonja and they got better. At least they were playing better basketball on offense. Dimitris Priftis in Kazan, he seemed like an offensive coach. Maybe it's because he had players like this. But his team was playing fast, high-scoring games. Maybe that's what Panathinaikos needs right now. I kind of like Panathinaikos as a club, so I don't want them to be bad. Yeah. But I just don't feel like they will be very successful next season.
And I think that we have to talk about the other green team. I mean, I think that Zalgiris is also one of the teams I would put on a list of losers of this free agency. Again, when we talk about these teams with low budget, it's a lot of it's out of their hands. But I cannot, not to mention the loss of Marius Grigonis, who was their go-to guy, one of the best shooting guards in the EuroLeague the last season, until March when he stopped playing. The EuroLeague rising star, Rokas Jokubaitis, he's a next big thing in the EuroLeague. True captain, Tom Walkup, one of the best defenders in the EuroLeague. Nigel Hayes, great stretch four, very smart guy who could play multiple position. Augustin Rubit was also a good role player, great teammate. So, and we are talking about the one team, and all these losses, it's just too much for one team. They lost top scorer, they lost one of the top defenders in the tournament, one of the best young players in the EuroLeague. I mean, it's just too much. Although I like some of the upgrades, like I love Josh Nebo. I think that he's gonna be great. I mean, he's gonna be one of the most athletic guys in the tournament. I think that Kavanaugh can replace Hayes in terms of stretching the floor. He can be even better shooter from the outside, but he cannot replace Nigel's defense. And of course, we still have to wait what they're gonna sign for the backcourt positions, point guard and shooting guard positions. The problem is that they don't have a lot of money. I'm hearing that the maximum amount of money they're offering for the one season is like something from 350 to 400,000 euros. So it's not there's not a lot of money in their bank account to impress with their signings. So it's gonna be a tough season for Žalgiris in my eyes.
Well, it's the type of situation where you are forced to sign what's left rather than what you wanted. Or
you have to take risks to sign players from the NBA environment.
If we're hearing names like Norris Cole, well, it means you're going to go for someone who's not going to be better than he was. Well, he's a veteran. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but as a main point guard, is he the guy that could lead Žalgiris? Knowing that we saw Thomas Walkup, elite defender, eventually a great point guard, I'm not so sure. I mean, knowing Martin Schiller, he probably needs a scoring point guard. Yeah. He needs that.
He's looking for two aggressive guards, maybe even more combo guards.
So kind of Norris Cole might seem the guy, but I'm not sure if he's
the guy. Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's consistent enough.
Yeah.
Like, he was not playing on good EuroLeague teams. He played in Maccabi first, but then it was teams like Budućnost or Asvel or Monaco in the Euro Cup. So it's not like he was playing for those elite clubs. What you mentioned about the new signings, it will be interesting with Edgaras Ulanovas. They addressed the small forward position because it was a problem last year because of what happened with Patricio Garino. They were basically playing the whole season without a real small forward. They had to move Hayes to this position. They had to play Vasturia, which was very unsuccessful. And it will be interesting because Edgaras Ulanovas, like I said, he was mismanaged by Igor Kokoshkov because there were no post-up situations. But will there be with Martin Schiller? Does Martin Schiller need a post-up guy in the third position? Doesn't seem like he does. And if not, Edgaras Ulanovas is coming back from injuries. The problem was not only that he did not get the ball in the post, he also had injuries. He skipped the Lithuanian national team this summer because he needed to deal with his own problems. So it's sort of like a rehab season for Edgaras. And you cannot be 100% sure that he solves the small forward problem. Of course, there's Niels Giffey as well.
They will. I mean, I think that Giffey and Ulanovas is for sure an upgrade.
Well, they will have bodies. They will have bodies. Yeah. But will these bodies be quality enough? That's the question. And Mantas Kalnietis, backup point guard, veteran, loves the club. We all know that. But as you said, it's a budget team. That's the reality. And when you don't have a lot of money, you need to make these sort of modest signings. And it will be the season where we will see the real Martin Schiller, I believe. Because first he took over the team with point guards and shooting guards already prepared by Jasikevicius. Now this is Schiller's team.
It's I won't judge Schiller by this season because it's his team, but as you said, it's a very low budget team.
Yeah, so I will
budget decreased like in 3 or 4 million, so it's a huge decrease.
I will not judge him by the position in the rankings. I will judge by the style of play. Whether it will be,
but I don't expect anything new. I mean, it's gonna be again free flow basketball, with a lot of players, making decisions. No structures like we were used to. So I don't expect anything different because all these backcourt players gonna be, the guys who can, change the game, who can, make the final decisions and not to wait anything, any calls from the baselines.
If they can stay competitive and play this type of free flow basketball, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not demanding Zalgiris
€7 million budget team
to be in discussion for the playoffs. No, it doesn't seem realistic at this time. So, yeah. But okay, so Martin Schiller is now facing some real European basketball type of challenges where you have a budget one year and next year it's 3 million less, and then you have to adjust to the situation. So he's like a coach coming from American environment, although he's from Austria and he knows German basketball, but now he sees the reality of the EuroLeague where the club has to make some sacrifices, and we'll see how he'll deal with it.
Who do you think that they could sign for the backcourt positions from the players we see on the market? For example, there are some players left. I know that Lorenzo Brown was one of the guys they were targeting, but it seems like he's too expensive. I would love to see Eric McCollum on this team actually, based on what kind of basketball Schiller likes, but he's also too expensive. Laprovitola probably is going to Barca. Jalen Smith was also available. He's still available. Who do you think would be a great fit?
Well, it's kind of hard to tell a name, but I would say this, from those that you mentioned. Eric McCollum, liability on defense, aging, not something I would like to see. I would actually like to see Zalgiris being creative and maybe gambling a little bit with some G League borderline NBA type of player. I would want an athletic point guard who could defend, not only score, but he could defend, because we got used to it seeing Thomas Walkup.
Jalen Smith would fit that picture, I think.
Maybe so. Maybe so. And when you have this tight budget, I would invest the most of it to the point guard and just what's left to the shooting guard, because if you don't get a really quality shooting guard, well, trust Karolis Lukošiūnas more as a shooter. Trust the guys that you have already, but you need a point guard, that's for sure. Because, Lukas Lekavičius, Mantas Kalnietis, they can play with other point guard. It can be solved, but you still need a guy who leads the team. So that's the key signing, and that's the position where you need to invest most of your money that's left. I don't have a name right now. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I cannot
say
like from free agency, but I would imagine that Coach Schiller also, he knows the G League. He knows coaches from the G League. He can have some contacts and find someone who will be a gamble, but a potentially successful gamble.
Yeah. Because teams like Zalgiris, they have to gamble.
Yeah.
With the budget like that, because when we talk about losers of the free agency, probably we can mention Alba Berlin because they lost Jason Granger, Peyton Siva, Niels Giffey, Fontecchio, Aito Garcia Reneses probably is leaving the team this summer, so it's also a huge thing for the team.
I have to say another thing about Zalgiris.
Okay.
Now seeing what's happening and how they are really struggling to find a new point guard, I'm not so sure if it was a good decision to extend Geoffrey Laverne in the middle of the season last year. I am not so sure. I mean,
I would have invested all this money for Tom Walkup, for example, because Olympiacos didn't pay him that much that, Zalgiris couldn't afford.
I mean, Geoffrey Laverne had a pretty good stat line, but it's not like he's an irreplaceable guy. Now they signed Josh Nebo. He might be the next best thing for Zalgiris at center. So I wouldn't have extended Geoffrey Laverne last year. I wouldn't have done that. Knowing that potentially Nigel Hayes is leaving, that Grigonis is leaving, that Walkup is leaving, you will have to invest some money there. And I don't think that extending Laverne was the priority at that time. Well, maybe it seemed the right idea, but in hindsight, I wouldn't have done that.
I agree. Anything to add?
Nope, not really.
Probably that's all, right? Because we were about to talk about the biggest needs of the EuroLeague teams, but we are here for almost half hour and a half. So
you gotta have used to it. You gotta get used to it, because I'm a talkative guy, and if we talk basketball, sometimes my monologues can extend. And you have to interrupt me next time, okay?
That's okay. It was our just first try, so we're gonna improve.
That's good. And we, like I said, want feedback from you guys. Any comments you have, just leave them.
You can find our podcast on Basket News YouTube channel, also on audio platforms like Spotify, probably Apple Podcasts, Podbean, something like that.
Probably all of them.
Yeah, you're gonna see the information in the description. And for sure, follow us on basketnews.com. I think for the first part, it was great. It was a pleasure, to talk about the free agency things with you, Rytis. So thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.